Welcome to the Tech League podcast. Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host Toby Sears and I'm here with my regular co-host Krisztian Fisher.
Hello.
No guests, but we will at some point. I've already started talking to some people. The topic we're going to go with this week is professional development in 2025. But I think of it more as if you're a young person coming into the industry in 2025, how would we navigate that? And then maybe along the lines of how to best try and shape your career in the modern climate to become more successful, we think, like our advice along those lines. But I'll ask you the question. If you were to start now in 2025, if you were, I don't know, when did you start in tech? Like, say you're a fresh-faced 18-year-old and you want to start working in tech. Maybe you're working in McDonald's or something and you want to actually start your career. How would you go about it? Or how would you advise maybe your daughter to go about it if she was going to go into tech?
It's difficult. I think more difficult than it used to be, I would say. I can't help myself but compare it to the times when I started in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a completely different landscape.
Yeah.
So I would, my natural advice that I would have given 20 something years ago doesn't apply anymore. Back then, tech was way simpler. It was probably easier to get into, and we had way less distractions in life. So it enabled you to focus on the technology that you were interested in. But today, tech is way more accessible than it used to be, I think. From the knowledge perspective, you can gain the same knowledge that you only could get through universities before.
Mm-hmm. And I think everyone nowadays is also starting off on a better foot, having grown up with technology.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the first question you would need to ask, like, why do you want to get into tech? Because the motivation makes a huge difference, in my opinion. If you love it and that's what you really want to do, and this is this is your passion, you would do it as a hobby as well, then you're already in a much better position than against somebody who just wants it for the money, right? Or some other reason, convenience, or I just want to sit in an office.
So you're talking like a tinkerer or someone who plays with Linux in their spare time, sets up machines, that kind of stuff, has a head start.
Because if you have the motivation, it's much easier. Then I can give you the advice of just do and learn, get some. We used to get these old books, right? Like you had to read books to gain knowledge. You had zero help from the technology. Like if you just use text editors without auto completion. So it was much harder to get into it. But now you can just sit down. There's amazing amount, quality and amount of tutorials on YouTube or generally on the internet. You can buy courses. I would give the advice if you don't know if you're interested enough to commit to go to university, for instance, you can dip your toes into it by just doing an online course and see how it feels. Can you keep up with it? Do you enjoy it?
There's so many other good tools. Like you could think it depends on your budget as well. YouTube is the best for me because I learn by watching videos and stuff like that. I'm not a big book reader. Maybe identify the way you learn best. Like if you're a book reader, so many articles online where you can learn, online courses and stuff. If you're a visual learner, YouTube is the best resource you can possibly do. There's also some other really cool ones. I heard, and we're not sponsored by them or anything, but I say on YouTube, boot.dev, which is like a game that teaches you how to play, teaches you how to write certain programming languages, or teaches you certain programming languages through a game. So there's so many different things at the moment. What are your thoughts on like boot camps and stuff at the moment? I don't think they're worth it. It depends again on how you learn. Because if you learn best through like super intense 6 weeks, maybe it is worth, but they're probably quite expensive. I've never looked them up.
Boot camps, I think, are a tool when the industry has a shortage of people. They commit to teach people the minimum skills that they need in their company. So those boot camps typically are organized by companies, and they if you're doing well, like they sort of commit to hire you at an entry level. So it could be a path in. But again, like if you're if your motivation is in the right place, like you can just do it yourself. Now, what do you need to get started in a company as a junior? Because obviously you will start as a junior. You just need to know one programming language that you're comfortable. It could be whatever. Like, so the most common languages are Java, JavaScript, well, TypeScript to be more
TypeScript, yep.
specific. So I think that's a good start. Python also can be also good.
It depends what you are leaning towards as well. Like if you want to go more enterprise backend, probably best to do Java. Like, if you want to do more full stack or web stuff, JavaScript's kind of everything. And if you want to do more data and like LLM, then Python.
Definitely. I think that's good enough. Like if you have one language under your belt, you know that quite well, and you can learn that yourself at home, really.
Yep.
You might land a job as a junior engineer, and that's enough. If you have, obviously, you would join a team that has more senior engineers who can teach you the ropes, right? Like there's a lot more going into, like when you're using a language professionally, there's a lot more that you need to know. Some design principles you have to follow, coding conventions.
I was going to say, like, you need to learn the wording and the ideas around it as well. Not just, you can't just brute force through a JavaScript code course and then, well, you probably can, but there are some concepts you need to learn as well.
Yes, but as an entry level, so you have to know the syntax and the working of the language itself. Now, if you're super good in that, that doesn't mean your knowledge can be used directly to make a profitable service, right? So you need to learn the context and everything that goes around it, principles, modeling. A lot of things go into creating good software, but you can learn that in the team and grow rapidly. But typically the scope of a junior engineer is one service or maybe a few services inside the service, like coding inside one repository, for instance. And you can become excellent at that, and that's already very valuable for the company.
Get a basic understanding, get quite comfortable with Git.
Yeah, these are, exactly. So these are the environments that you need, like, or the extra skills that you will have to pick up. You will be exposed to how to deploy a service, how to monitor a service. So you would learn a lot, but this is what is expected, I would say, from a junior engineer. Basic level of understanding the context, being good at least in the language, so that's not hindering yourself. You can grow from there. And then when it comes to a bit more, let's say, second level engineer, then your scope will increase. Maybe multiple services, maybe you will be part of an API design, maybe, and it keeps growing. And then when you reach the more senior level, then most of the decisions you will have to make yourself. You might start needing to coach more junior people that are entering the workforce pretty much, and go from there. So the responsibilities and the scope keep increasing during your career up until the level where it's mostly non-tech, or not non-technical, but
it's oversight and like
exactly,
architecture. Right?
So the closer you get to the business, actually, like the business reasons why we're doing things, should we do this, not just the how. So so your role across your career changes from how to do things to should we do things, and what should we do as you grow higher.
I was wondering, in 2025, do these still apply? That like learn a programming language, get in? Because with the advent of vibe coding and the AI coding assistants, it looks like at least at current point of time, and it's October 2025, juniors are more and more being replaced. Well, the industry thinks that they're being replaced by AI coding agents. It's going to backfire massively, I think.
I think it's a misunderstanding of what AI is or should be. Right now, there's this notion of, as you said, like that it replaces the juniors. You can't replace it. I think if you start now, it's the tool set that you have has increased. There's a new tool on your tool belt, which is AI.
Mm-hmm.
So even as a junior, you have to use the available tools. So if AI isn't such an available tool, you use it. But we still need the people, to do the prompting and to oversee what the AI is doing. And so maybe I could put it this way: like if you're a terrible programmer, let's say, and you use AI, you will have a terrible.
Yeah, it's shit in, shit out.
Yeah, you will have a poor software. If you're a good engineer and you use AI, you will have a better outcome. So I don't think the people are unnecessary in the pipeline.
No.
So it just changes how we work. Pure coding of just sitting down like a code monkey, if you wish, that is being replaced by AI, but for quality work there's always need. I don't think this will completely replace people.
No, but what it seems like is company management, company leadership are expecting mid and senior level engineers to use these AI tools to generate all the code that juniors would do before. And what it's doing is it's leaving this void where the juniors were, and making it a lot harder for junior engineers to get into the industry. So maybe I would even advise, if you're starting now, also learn how to use the AI coding assistants.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tool that you are almost must use. Our junior, like the junior starting now, will work with AI. I think we can make that statement unless there's a big shift on the market where it becomes unsustainable for financial reasons. But so if you start as a junior, I still think it's valid that you have to know the language that you're generating the code in, because how do you see that it's wrong if you don't understand what it's doing?
That we're seeing that so it allows you to leapfrog the earlier understandings a little bit, right? So people are coming in without understanding the language, and that's going to hinder you pretty quickly, I would think.
Yeah, so think about it as a force multiplier. So if a junior needed 2 weeks to write code before, because they had to figure out how is this API call and how do I do this, how do I do multi-thread, now AI just helps you. Then the same person who you hired could do 10 times more. Let's say.
And something I see as a big problem there is there are a lot of people, they learn by doing, and they learn by failing and not being able to do these things. And if you just magically have code that works without working out how to get it working, you're gonna lack. And I mentioned this in previous discussion, the mental model of how the system works. And you're also going to not learn those crucial problem-solving skills that are required for later on when you're developing a larger, more complicated system. And Claude throws thousands of lines of code at you. You can't just go, "Oh, it looks good." You have to understand where it's going wrong, because it usually is going wrong. And The problem we're going to have with juniors, I think, going forward is they're not going to have a lot of these fundamental skills that are learned by failing and working out how the wiring works. So that's another suggestion I would say is build a few services without coding tools. Maybe that's a good idea. Learn to use the coding tools. They are very useful for simple stuff, but try and understand what's happening behind them. Or try and understand what the code they generate does.
Yeah, regardless how you or who writes the actual code, the same principles have to be applied, because the industry figured out how to create good software and what makes software bad. So you will have to keep repeating those patterns. So if you can't prompt it properly, and let's say you create spaghetti code with AI, because you definitely can do that, the company will be hindered. Like, so it will be very difficult to change the code, to reason about it, to add a new feature, to maintain it, to monitor it. So you will be forced to learn these principles. Maybe this common knowledge will be just expressed in predefined prompts, and you don't even understand it. You just put it in, right? And you expect the AI just to do it right. But if you want to verify that it actually did it correctly, you will need to have some level of understanding. And maybe it means you just lose the skills to program, like, oh, how do I create a for loop? And you don't need to know it necessarily. It's not that important from the outcome, really, as long as it works. But the properties of the software that actually do matter, we still have to check, right? Like, is it maintainable? Is it correct, right? Does it do what I wanted it to do? Can I prove that it does what I wanted it to do? Creating testing or tests and proving that it actually does what needs to be done. So I think all those will still apply. So newcomers will still have to acquire that type of knowledge. And maybe you won't know the exact API calls and whatnot, and probably doesn't matter. So I think it just raises the abstraction level a bit higher, even for juniors, right? So it's like you had an example earlier in the previous episode, like it feels like going from assembly to a higher level language. It's pretty much the same, right?
Yeah, but there's other things you can do to differentiate yourself. So say we're talking a software engineer now to get in as a junior. What about infrastructure or cloud engineer as a junior? How would I advise these days? Yeah, I was a tinkerer, and I had Linux running on my own computer, and I would try and get things working on it. And then I bought a small server rack and a bunch of Cisco and Juniper switches, and I built myself a home lab, and I learned how to work with the networking and stuff. Probably not so valid these days. It is if you want to go into data centers and stuff. I would still say learning Linux is the best because it's more widely used than Windows, but Linux. And then learn the CLI, learn how to do simple tasks, learn how to SSH into servers. If you can, spend a little bit of time learning how to do bash scripting, how to do installs. But then once you have a pretty basic, good understanding of Linux and how to get multiple computers talking to each other, then you can start as a junior. You'll be useful. So in terms of cloud, there are different disciplines. There's going to be, so if you want to focus on hardware and data centers, basics of networking, OSI model, IPs, stuff like that. And then for the cloud, you get yourself an AWS account and use the free tier and start exploring. Set up EC2 machines, learn something like Terraform and how the state works in Terraform so that you can say, okay, I know how to do infrastructure as code in AWS. If you can demonstrate that you can do that, that's enough to get a junior job somewhere. Learn how to navigate the documentation for Terraform and how to provision resources and how it works.
I agree. Right, like at this point in the industry, like we have so many big cloud providers that if you have any expertise in one of them, you will probably be able to land a job. And and it is useful for the company because most developers are not extremely knowledgeable about that. So if you want to distinguish yourself in one way or another, if you just add this type of knowledge to your repertoire, you're already better than most people. So it's not that. So it's a a bit of a blessing and a curse that we have so many technologies, but also what should I learn? I would always go with what is the most commonly used and learn something.
Which at the moment seems to be more and more Azure, which is horrible.
One of the big three, right?
Yeah. The problem with like a junior cloud engineer, what people will try and force you into is like a DevOps role. And then you need a lot of tools on your tool belt. Mm-hmm. It's a lot harder to learn all the fundamentals to become a DevOps engineer. But focus on learning a cloud, one of them. Like you're saying, pick the biggest one. I would go, it's going to be Google, AWS, or Azure. Azure seems to be where all the jobs are right now. Because Microsoft are very good with their incentives for getting companies on. So they'll just throw them free, like millions in free credits to get them to move over.
So that would mean like you create some service. Maybe you write it, maybe you use AI, and then you create some sort of deployment mechanism where you deploy it to your free, let's say, AWS account and run your own software. That means like you're already
that's DevOps.
On the path to be, yes, but you're only on the path to be a well-rounded engineer.
Yeah. This is something we can switch into, like how to be more well-rounded. Because we're saying, okay, learn one of these verticals. That's what I would call them, as a vertical. You want to learn software engineering, you learn a language. You want to be a sysadmin, you learn Linux or Windows. You want to be a cloud engineer, you learn one of the clouds. So that's you start by focusing on the vertical. But over time, you want to spread. We call it in the industry T-shaped people. So they have a deep knowledge in one area and then a wide, shallow knowledge in the other areas.
Yeah. And as you, yeah, exactly. And then as you progress in your career, you add more verticals. So maybe you were an excellent programmer. That's typically how you would start on the software engineering side. You're a brilliant programmer, but you also know a little bit how to deploy, let's say, and also know how to do data management, database design, so that would be the horizontal part of the T. And then as you are getting more and more experience, you add more verticals where you become an expert in those fields, and these stack up. It's then it becomes a pie, I guess, instead of a T, and then it gets more and more.
Well, the T part gets wider. That's why it's still going to be a T. The T part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you add more expertise under your belt, and that's how you progress in your career.
But like you were mentioning there, you're a cloud engineer. You learn the cloud really well. You know how to do all the cloud networking. You know how to provision resources. Then you start learning about security, how to secure the cloud. Just having a little bit of knowledge on how to set up security groups, network ACLs, stuff like that, you're becoming more well-rounded. Then you learn deployment tooling. Like, okay, I want to have a secure way of deploying from GitHub to AWS. I set up the OIDC provider and then have a GitHub workflow that deploys something. You're more well-rounded. Then you might write a service that then you deploy even more well-rounded. So that's how you become more and more useful, because if we're hiring someone, if you're choosing between someone, if I'm choosing between someone who's super good at one thing or really good at one thing and okay at a lot of other things, I'll pick the second guy because they're more useful to me. Because unless you're, like you said before, a coding monkey and you're doing one thing, you're turning requirements into methods or classes or whatever. If you're anything else, you're going to have a lot of different things to do. So having someone who already demonstrates that they can learn other areas and are willing to is way more valuable for me. when I'm hiring.
Yes, and you're also harder to replace by AI the more you know. So in your example, like if you're just getting a specification and then you send back the code, you will be replaced by AI. That's what's happening right now. I remember in the late 90s, there was this, I forgot the name, but there was this experimenter that did exactly this. You got Java Bean specifications, like the interface and the documentation, and then you had to implement it and then send it back. Some tests were running that was written by someone else based on another specification, and suddenly you had the code. The coders themselves didn't know what it was for. It was just a small piece of literally one class that they had to implement and send it back, and that's how you got paid. Now that will go away.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
So the more aspects of the software engineering you know, the more secure your position will be. I would say, but we can approach it from another angle as well. If you look at all the possible jobs in the world, is software engineering still a desirable career choice? And I would say so. Definitely, absolutely.
It's harder to get into, but yes, I agree.
It's harder to, as a junior, to land a job probably, but it's easier to learn it.
If like I was talking to a guy the other day who had just graduated with data engineering, or what was it, data science?
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are like, I was like, you are a lucky bastard, because he was like, it's amazing, because I basically pick where I want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you're say you're going to university and you want to learn programming, but you can also minor in data science, do it. But maybe that's following current trends, because something I don't like doing is data. So I think maybe it's more valuable to be good at what you want to do than follow the trends. And you're more likely to be good at what you want to do if you're passionate about it.
Definitely. In Diary of the Wimpy Kid, that was Roderick's first rule. I think never be good at something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So the inverse of that is like be so good in something that you do want to do. So it's but if you approach it from maybe like a mental health or like psychological perspective, this industry is unique in a sense that you can create amazing things from nothing.
Very creative.
If you have this creative vein, like AI is just helping you. So it's not hindering the progress. It's actually in that sense, your progress personally. It can help you. We see a lot more people who had ideas before, but they didn't have the skills to implement it. Now jumping on vibe coding and they create amazing things. Like at least they realize the ideas which they couldn't do before without funding and having programmers and whatnot. So it is an opportunity at the same time, and that never goes away, I think, because of the nature of software engineering. You can create anything you want, really. I remember what like mind-blowing experience for me was when I was in my early teens, the 80s, and I got my first computer smuggled into the country. It was there was an embargo. Our German relatives brought me a Commodore 64. Didn't even know what a computer was at that age. And then when I realized I can program it and I can do whatever I want, it was like a whole new world opening up for me. So I think this is happening again with AI because people who had no technical skills can start to realize the ideas. Sure, they will run into problems, but the industry is there to help them and raise them up once they have proven that what they did was meaningful or useful to someone. So there's a new career path now that hasn't existed before.
Oh, like vibe coding SaaSes. We'll see how long that lasts. Yeah. I mean, what I would translate that into is just try it And like fear of failure stops so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I learned very early on is who cares? It's better to fail 3 times and then succeed than to never try at all. So just try making some stuff. If you want to be a software engineer, learn by doing. But that's how I would learn, is to learn by doing. If you're a book person, read a book or go online and find billions of articles on or ask ChatGPT how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
How do I program in JavaScript? And it'll tell you exactly how to program in JavaScript. So just get started.
Start doing it, yeah.
Yeah, start doing it and you develop skills. And then what they say, it's 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. So get started now. And then we'll see you in 10,000 hours when you're useful. But yeah, so we touched slightly on the T-shaped people, and like so. But let's back up a little bit. When you're hiring juniors, what do you look for mostly? So, say your current position, you're doing a lot of interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interviewing for juniors at all?
No, I'm typically interviewing for staff level, principal level, or senior engineers as well. Juniors, not that often, because I'm doing architecture interviews typically, and we don't expect juniors to be able to do good architecture. So I'm not exposed to that part, but we do coding interviews with them. And what we're looking for is good coding practices, like test-driven development, that you are able to read the code and understand it. So the typical, at least in the companies that I work with, the coding interview is about looking at an already existing code and making modifications to it, because that's the most likely thing you're going to do in your job. It's very rarely a greenfield development. So you have to have the skills to understand other people's code, spot the problems, and make modifications to it. So typically we ask, hey, this is a new requirement that we need to add to the code. How would you go about it? And then what we're looking for, do you start with writing a test for the condition for the new feature and then implement it? Or do you spot the design errors that were made by others? So more like a Boy Scout principle, like I see something, and then I fix it along the way also, but also how to communicate. Like the times when we had lone wolves sitting in their mother's basement coding away without communicating with others is over. Like if you're not good in working together with your team, expressing your ideas, reasoning why you did things or why we should do something differently, you're going to have a problem, I would say, because nobody likes to work with people who are not communicating well. So that's a crucial skill I would add.
I was going to say, like, that's something I've forgotten to mention as well, is something that's probably, well, maybe not so much these days, but historically has been neglected over practical skills, is soft skills like social ability.
100%.
Super crucial. Again, if I was interviewing 2 people and one was an amazing genius but couldn't communicate with the team, or I got the vibe was off. Not the vibe, but like it didn't feel like they were very communicative or friendly. And the other person was less skilled, but much more friendly and open to learning and willing to admit mistakes and stuff like that. 100% going with the second person.
Yes, absolutely. It's crucial to cooperate.
As a team leader, you're looking for someone who can contribute to the business, but also will not be a detriment to the overall team or teams. So making sure that you're friendly and communicative and you have a smile on your face and you're dressed not scruffy and you don't smell. Stuff like this is super important for like getting into the industry as well. I mean, I joke about it, but I talked to my old boss a while back, and my first job in a data center, he said the only reason that he hired me was because I was wearing a suit. And no one else wore a suit. Like, because they would just hire anyone with any kind of technical knowledge. they would just get them in because it was like, monkeys looking after tech support and stuff. And like there was a batch of people come in. They hired the one wearing a suit because obviously they were serious about the job. So I got the job by wearing a suit, and I was clean shaven and I showered.
I'm guilty as charged. Like my first job, when I had to pick up a job when I started university because I didn't have enough money to live. And I went on my first job interview. First advert, it was in a paper, right? I classified in a paper. I went there in my leather jacket, full rock and roll. I didn't even have a suit. They hired me on the spot, but
Nice,
it was
nice.
based on the interview. But it wouldn't fly today.
I mean, you don't have to wear a suit, but you just have to dress,
Yeah, be decent. I wasn't.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, like what do you look for a junior, like in a junior when you're interviewing? Me, I don't have high expectations on the technical skills. If they have good technical skills, that's great, but the willingness to learn and the capability of learning.
Yeah. Being able to demonstrate that you're able to learn.
Yes, and so the way typically how I probe it on the interviews that I'm doing is I suggest an alternative solution to what they have been presenting, and then see how they react. If they refuse, no, I'm going with my idea, didn't even entertain the other idea, that's a red flag. Or if they just blindly follow the suggestion, that's also not good. So I want people to think and express their ideas and communicate, hey, look, like, I think it's also a good proposal, but because of this and this, I'm choosing this one. That's a perfectly good answer. So really, very simply put, the capability and the willingness to learn.
Okay, so that if we could summarize it, friendly, not scruffy, as in like sort of somewhat taken care of, has some technical skills and is willing and can show that they're willing to learn and talk about. And a good one as well is no arrogance. That's something that I don't think many people realize about tech is like, it's super important to own up when you've messed up, like almost instantly. There has to be no judgment that you've messed up. Like being able to communicate that will cause, people who don't communicate that they've messed up will cause way more incidents and trouble for the company than someone who will. So that's another thing I look at. Yeah, honesty is super, and like integrity.
It's way more important than to be, integrity is way more important than to be right.
Yeah. I mean, like being able to be wrong and like learn from being wrong is super good. I think that's one of the things that made me somewhat successful now is I never had that arrogance. I like when I'm wrong in a way because I learn. So I would definitely look for that. So we've got like a massive long list now, but you could summarize that. We've summarized it somewhat. Be nice, don't be arrogant. Get some technical skills under your belt. Before you go to the interview, have a shower and a shave. Or if
you're very focused on that.
I mean, the amount of people I've interviewed, like who've turned up with coffee stains and stuff, and I'm like, you're not supposed to judge that, but to me, it shows that they don't care.
Yeah, so there's a risk that would translate into the code or the environments that they create as well.
I mean, because you can have a bit of OCD at times. I can have a bit of OCD, is what I mean, with like doing things certain ways, but that's because I've learned how to do them certain ways. But I like to also think about the person who's coming behind me, and I make it nice and clean so that the next person finds a nice, clean environment. I don't know how I get that out of a scruffy person who's not washed their clothes, but like to me, it's more like maybe that's like super old school English, British way of thinking. But to me, you make an effort to show them that. Okay, let me put it a different way. You want to remove as many obstacles as possible when you're trying to get employed by someone. They're making a decision whether or not to give you money to perform a task. The best way to do that is to remove potential obstacles, and one of them is not dressing appropriately for the job, or like don't overdress, but like dress appropriately for the situation. make sure that you're well presented, talk clearly. Yeah, you know what I mean. Say you've been hired as a junior, and you had to plan. You were sitting down with a new hire as a junior. You're the boss. How would you say to them to plan out their career path? Like, what skills should they start focusing on, and when?
I like to identify what they're interested in, what they want to do themselves. Most people have some level of understanding of what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, what they would like to learn more of. If you're like, for my teams, if I manage teams, I like to create a competence matrix, like to understand what they're good at. So it's a very simple matrix where we have the team members and then we have skills listed, and each team member can provide feedback. What are they good at? What do they, and these are orthogonal questions. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What would you like to learn? And what would you not like to do? Right? Because then it's very often you're good at something, but you don't want to do it. Then I know we shouldn't put that person on that type of task because it will lead to burnout and they will just leave. So that's how I would approach it. And then at least on the skill set level, right? And this can be technical skills. This can be other like soft skills, speech, like public speaking, or it could be also design, architecture. Yeah. So as I like to build on what people want to do, or if I see some obvious lack of skill, those are typically soft skills, then I would help them improve in that. Just replaying situations. Hey, in this situation, you could have just stayed silent and ask questions instead of judging, or you would or understand the situation fully before you come up with a strong opinion. And this is one of the hardest parts of software engineering, I would say, because we're all very opinionated. We think our idea is the best.
Yep.
This is the way we are doing things is probably how it should be done by everyone. And this was for me, this was the hardest, probably when transitioning to a more senior engineer, is to let go of a lot of things. Would I write the code the same way? No. Would I exactly do the same API? No. Does it fulfill the business purpose? Yes. I'm not pushing on it.
That's what I was going to say. Your mindset shifts once you hit senior staff. You become more business focused. Because like, it's like every time you step up, your perspective gets bigger. I think, as you've said before. So the things that you did before seem smaller. So like how you implement a certain function, it doesn't really matter that much as long as it does the job.
Yeah, that's probably mentally the hardest, because the outcome. I always was my standards were quite high always. I want it to be the best, the fastest, the nicest, and at some point it's counterproductive, because it doesn't matter how you name your variables. From a business perspective, it does matter for the craft itself, but you have to start tolerating other opinions and other ways of achieving the same goals, and you have to start thinking about, does this make a difference, in the bottom line, right? Like if not, and that has many aspects, of course, like maintainability and a lot of different aspects. But in the end, if it doesn't matter, I find it easier to let it go and leave it with typically the staff engineers to make these decisions.
Trust and verify.
Yeah, but
verify.
Yeah, exactly, because they're the best, they're the peak, and that's maybe we can talk about like this arc of the career. In the beginning, you feel like you know a lot, but the more you learn, the more you
Dunning-Kruger.
the more you realize how little you know. And once you get over the first peak of this, is that Mount Stupid? I think it's called.
Yeah,
Dunning-Kruger. Right. So when you still don't know enough, but you think you know everything, and then it gets harder, and then you start questioning yourself, like, oh, am I? As your experience now grows, you start to have doubts about a lot of things. Should we do it? Are we doing it the right way? And so you have to self-reflect quite often to stay on track and not to lose faith in yourself.
Yep. You will get imposter syndrome pretty hard as well.
Exactly. That's where I was going with this. It's a very common phenomenon that you feel like I'm out of my depth, but I'm still in this position. Just learn to live with it. Be humble.
Yeah.
Be humble and
yeah, I agree. That's probably the best way of dealing with imposter syndrome is just going, okay, I might not know everything, but I can learn a lot. So I'm going to keep trying. Every day I'll turn up and try my best and communicate if you don't know something. That's what, to me, humbleness is the best.
Yeah, my strategy is always ask the most amount of questions, even if it sounds stupid. Ask the questions.
I had a colleague, he said there's no such thing as stupid questions, only stupid answers.
Well, there are stupid questions, but...
well, no, I mean,
but I understand
yeah, you understand the sentiment, right?
Yeah, it's the sentiment, exactly. So it's much better to ask questions than not to ask questions and having doubt and then trying to figure out yourself. People react to that very well if you ask questions, in my experience.
I've seen it gone horribly wrong with people who don't ask questions and they get anxious because they're stuck in this imposter syndrome cycle of not knowing what to do, not knowing how to fix it. They think that if they ask questions, they're going to get shouted at when they won't. And it just ends badly that way. Whereas if you ask for questions or if you ask for help or you ask questions, I've never seen a situation where that's gone bad.
Yeah, exactly. And this is especially true when you join a new company as a junior or actually any level. Ask all the questions. Ask the stupid questions, right? Or
the first
even
week
the most trivial questions.
The first week at any new business is your brain is just running like a million miles an hour because you're trying to assimilate, because every tech company is different. You'll never go to two that are the same. They're always running things slightly different or completely different. So it doesn't matter if you're staff or an architect or whatever, that first week, you're going to have to ask a million questions and you're not going to be able to sleep because your brain's going to be like sorting all this information. It happens to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the perfect time, because even if you feel like you're supposed to know the answer, it's much better to ask the question. And you have an excuse because you're new to the company as well. So ask as many questions as you can. And this includes not just the technology, but also how does the company work? You would be surprised to see like how many engineers who work for a company do not understand the business model of the company. How do we make money? Is it based on the subscriptions, or is it like where is the money coming from? And that can lead to situations where engineers engineer systems the wrong way because they don't realize what is important to the business and what isn't. And they put way more effort into areas that make zero money or are completely uninteresting for the customers. It happens too often, actually. So if you want to distinguish yourself as a new, even a junior, ask the business questions. How do we make money? How does the company work? What other divisions there are? Who's doing what in the company? What is my role in the company? These are very important questions for you to understand what you should do. And that can inform your micro decisions as well when you're coding, really.
But in terms of an aspiring engineer within a company, if you come in and from day one are taking an interest in how the business functions, you're going to set yourself up a lot better for advancement because people will
Definitely.
notice that. Definitely.
100%.
And you're going to be able to create software that better addresses the company. You'll be able to understand the issues the company are facing. And it's just like upper management, middle and upper management will 100% see that from you.
Definitely. And this also goes into like the industry's plague, I would say. Most of or a very high percentage of engineers, including me, are introverts.
Yeah, me too.
So I had to learn all these skills, like how I talk to people. I have a very high threshold to pick up the phone and call someone.
I can't do it. It takes a lot for me to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But somehow in the work environment, I learned to deal with this as an introvert. Like, how do I achieve my goals? And it has been very, very useful skill to have for me.
Being able to, I hate it. The phone thing. I remember being at when I worked in a data center, I was in a management position and they needed a skip. And I had to call someone to get a skip. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make myself do it. It was horrible. It was such a horrible feeling because you're like stuck between two things. I did it in the end, but it took a lot to get me to do that. And like even today, if someone calls me, and I get called all the time by like CEO of this company, because I work quite high level now, and they want to ask questions all the time, and CEOs generally are extroverts, and they're quite happy with the phone. So I get the phone call, I'm like, oh, like, well, but the way I dealt with it is I make sure to save their contact so I know who's calling. And then I'm like, okay, I'll answer that one. But do you know what I mean? And then answer the question.
Yeah. So I think that it's important for yourself to understand what type of person you are, and adjust your career based on that, or acquire the skills that you need to overcome these issues. Because otherwise, you will be very limited in your possibilities. So so that would be my recommendation. If you're an introvert and you know about that, force yourself to learn these skills, because it will open up a whole new world for you, and you will come out happier in the other end. But for instance, if I have,
so I was going to say, you go first.
So as an example, when I have a full day, heavy discussions, at the end of the day, my social battery is so exhausted, I have to lay down and just have silence around me, or I go out in the forest or walk the dog. I'm done. I can't even have discussions with my family, really. It's that bad, but you can manage these things and you can improve. So it's something that we shouldn't ignore and
I was going to
from.
say we're extroverts. If you're an extrovert, you have the other downside is you're much more likely to be working with introverts. So you have to learn how to deal with introverts in order to not alienate yourself in the company. Because if you're too, I know that, like, I think of extroverts that I have around me, and they're very friendly, but they don't respect when people need quiet time, and they need the social contact in order to get their energy. It's the same, like if they spent all day being quiet, they would need to go out and do something with other people. It's the complete opposite. So learn ways of getting that energy for yourself, not necessarily from your colleagues, because if you try and get it from your colleagues, you might alienate them because they just want to be left alone if they're introverted. So it's very important, like you said, to learn these soft skills, learn how to interact with people. And yes, you get that in other industries or like working in other things, but in software, in tech in general, you'll be in an office with a bunch of different people, and the majority of them are probably going to be introverts. But if you're an extrovert, make friends with like the marketing department or sales or something, and go spend time with them, because they will all be extroverts. I guarantee it. I don't know a single introvert who's a salesperson.
No, I would die if I would need to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we covered a lot of different areas.
Well, let's carry on. So, like, with your junior, you've got in. Now you want to move to a mid. Your junior, you've got in. Now you want to move to just a standard engineer, not a junior. What they call mid-level, something like that.
Yeah. Level 2.
So, like, if I'm thinking about it from my teams, I want them to get a good understanding of everything we do in the company from a technical perspective. They know they can be somewhat left alone. So I tend to judge people on how much I can trust them to be left alone in terms of severity. So they can respond to tickets, or they can respond to Slack, and they can create resources. They can follow tickets without asking for too much assistance. And they have a bit more of a broader knowledge of things. So that's a mid-level to me. Senior, you're at the point where you basically do anything without being supervised, exactly. And you can, like you said before, you can maybe mentor a junior. You know how everything within our domain works, high enough level, maybe, and you're more than willing to dive into any area. And then you get to staff, and staff is more like you have multiple areas like that. So it's not like, so a senior will have like knowledge of one domain or one area within the company, tech area. And then staff, you start spreading out to more domains.
There's also, like, at staff level, I would expect them to know a bit more theoretical knowledge as well about different design principles, why we're doing it, and consistently applying them, standards, applying those standards within the domain or sphere of influence. Staff engineers might actually work with multiple teams. Most often they're in one team, but they have multiple services. And the staff engineers, I expect to design very nice interfaces between domains, let's say. I think staff is at the peak level of programming as well. At least that's how I look at them. They are typically, because they already must be, like, how many years? So a junior, from 0 to, I don't know, 5 years, I would say, you can be a junior. It's fine. Or maybe 3 years. If you have to, like, maybe as a junior, you've seen one company, right? As you get more senior and more senior, you should switch industries. You should switch companies. You should see different things, because you have to see what works, what doesn't work, what good looks like. If you grew up in a company from senior or from junior level to, let's say, principal engineer, it's very questionable, because you will have sample size of 1. Right. So that's not good enough. So I would say, like, even as a senior engineer, you should consider switching companies if you, or at least being exposed to other companies.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you don't necessarily have to switch, but you have to be exposed. You have to do a lot of research and reading, and, like, because if you're happy in the job and you like the company, or maybe you own part of the company or whatever, I can't think of many reasons why. The money's so good they want to keep you, then okay, fine. But you have to expose yourself to other things, and because the amount of times you see these people who've been in the same role, the same company, and moved up the roles the whole time, they cannot think outside that one box, and they cannot see. You need the outside perspective, because we go into companies a lot of times and we bring the outside perspective, and you say clearly that's wrong, but they're blinded by ignorance, I guess, is the.
Or it's complacence.
No, I don't, like, because not all of them are complacent. Not all of them are like, they don't want it to be good. They just don't know, like you said, they don't know what good looks like. So you have to expose yourself to these other companies. And the best way to do that is to be in the company, because then you're in the trenches and you can understand the culture and everything around it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, like, the senior level, and then staff level, I expect the staff level to be able to lead a project from beginning to end at high quality, see through it, make sure that things happen in the right order, the correct way, and successfully wrap up a project. And then at principal level of the staff, it shifts a little bit. You have way more focus on the overall company strategy and an influence on that. What should we do? Then people usually look at you for answers on, okay, this is the business problem. Should we go about it with technology? And then selecting the right path for the technology, like, should we go solution A or solution B?
Company-wide decisions as well.
It's strategy. Instead of the tactical level, you work almost entirely at a strategic level. Of course, it's very good to go back to coding and get your hands dirty, but the reality is that most of your time will be spent on understanding the problem, and then finding the best ways to solve that problem.
And gathering feedback and stuff from the teams as well, because I think the higher you go up, the more social you have to be as well. Because like you said, you're leading projects. You might have to work with project managers. You have to work with engineering managers. You have to. It becomes a lot more complex, and complexity within a company means you have to be social to get anything done.
Yeah, most of the work at that level is communication. Make sure that everybody is on the same ground. Like so we talk the same language. We're working towards the same goals. That we play nice with each other. On the tech side, I mean, it shifts. But if we're talking about you just started, your scope will be so small that this is not going to be something that you need to be concerned
enjoy
with.
That innocence. Where you think you know loads. That's what I would do at the start.
Yeah, exactly. It's very. I think the most fun as an engineer is up until staff level, I would say.
Or management, because we haven't talked about that. But at some point, they will tempt you into going into management, and I've done that twice by mistake.
Well, it depends on your personality. I think I've been managing as well, but I prefer to be an individual contributor on the tech side without the people management requirement.
Yeah.
You still have to work with people, and you still have to
but you don't have to
share your ideas
and
discuss. Exactly. Yeah. Because that part I do not enjoy. But most companies don't force you to switch to management, because that's one of the concerns, or used to be one of the biggest concerns for engineers. The higher you go, the farther away you go from technology, and that's why you started your whole career. You wanted to do tech, and now you're sitting there on management meetings and doing nothing but talk and write documents. So most modern companies give you the opportunity to stay on the individual contributor path. You don't have to become a manager. You can simply progress purely on the technical side, right?
Yeah.
So there's
I don't know if we've covered that, but there's multiple ways you can progress. So one is junior, standard, senior, staff, principal, whatever, and then another way is the junior, mid, senior. And then one I've seen, like when I'm working with SRE teams, for example, and I have a long background in SRE, the way I like to think about it is somewhat like there's two career paths. Like say that you have a Java organization, and there's a Java developer that comes in as a junior, they go mid, they go senior, and then they have a choice. You can keep getting super focused and super, specialized in Java, or you can become a broad troubleshooter. You can broaden and become a lot more generalist. Then you go into SRE. And that's a slightly different career path, but also to me, I think a really nice one, because you get to do a lot more. It depends again on your personality. Do you like being really good at one thing, Or do you like doing lots of different things? Because personally, I like having a different challenge every day when I go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And the SRE path took me down that way because you don't know what you're going to be doing in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's good in a way. But
Mm-hmm.
sorry, the dog's in the way.
Certainly you can make lateral movements.
Mm-hmm.
So go into a different area. If you're bored with backend development, you can go front end. You can go data science or data engineering. You can go SRE. This industry has so many different areas that you can specialize in. So you're not forced to become a manager or even hire engineer. And I wouldn't even recommend it for everyone. Like not everybody has to become a principal engineer because it comes with a lot of burden, a lot of responsibility. You have to work on your communication skills. It might not be for everyone, and you're not forced to. But if you want to switch to management, for instance, I would say that the most realistic level where you should transition from an engineer to an engineering manager is around the staff level.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you're senior engineer, senior engineer, higher level senior engineer, like more experience, because that means you've gone through a few projects, you have seen a few companies, which means you were exposed to at least, a decent amount of people. So you can start managing. And you also need some experience. We haven't gone through like what, time frames. Senior engineer, like I would say like up to like 10 years, it's like you can be a senior engineer. You need that level because if you think like bigger projects take years to do. So if you have 3-4 projects behind you to become a staff engineer, you're already 10 plus years, 10, 15 years into the industry. Yep. So I think that's where you have enough confidence and experience to have seen failed projects. Why did they fail? To avoid those mistakes. And I like to say, like, when I join a company, it's like, I'm here to help you not making all the mistakes that I have made, right, along the way, because I've made all the mistakes possible.
You know
right?
what not to do. And
yeah, exactly. And that's yeah, exactly. So, and that's very valuable because the more junior you are, when you're junior, you might have seen good, right? Like, oh, this worked, but it worked in that environment, under those circumstances, those financial state, that company with those people. Like, but you don't know, if you try to repeat the same pattern, it might completely fail. So that's why it's important to have experience, like to be exposed to different companies, different areas, different industries even, because one industry might operate completely, like think about like finance has a completely different constraint set than, let's say, gaming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you can learn from all of those. So it's important to be exposed.
I think it's worth remembering as well, like you were saying, it's such a massive industry. Like when you're first getting in, you don't realize the variety of roles and organizations that there are. So that's why adaptability is super important, because they might hire you as a JavaScript engineer at a bank and then you learn how the bank does it. But then you go to a gaming company, completely different. And it's something that popped into my head is, I think the worst one would be you go to a startup, a really fun startup, and you start your career at a fun startup where everyone's super supportive and you got a lot of freedom, and the startup becomes really successful and it's all bells and whistles and fun, right? And then you go to a bank. It's like hitting a brick wall. So there'll be these massive culture shocks as well as you move around to different companies.
Yeah, and then you can pick which one you prefer.
Yeah.
Right. Startups typically don't pay as well than as established big companies, but it doesn't mean that you will be happier in a big company.
Something I try to advise junior people as well is think about the industry and how the industry relates to how they treat employees. So an example of this is, say you're fresh and you're a gamer and you really, like for me, I really wanted to work in the gaming industry, as in like video games. I didn't get a chance earlier on, so I was working in other industries. And as I worked in those other industries, I realized like the easier it is to hire for a company, the worse they can treat their employees because you're more easily replaceable. So I always like if you see a job at, I don't know, some random company that's not super famous and they're paying the same maybe as a super famous company, have a double think, because if they're struggling to hire, well, it's quite tricky to say this actually. I'm just saying, bear in mind that if you go to a company that has a really solid hiring pipeline and there's like 50 people behind you waiting to get in, you're more likely to be treated badly
or exploited to a certain degree.
yeah, because they know that they can push you to work harder than maybe you want to or you feel is safe, because they can replace you super quickly. Whereas if you go to a company that struggles to hire a bit, they're more grateful to have you on and you can develop easier in there. It doesn't mean you should slack. It means, because they can still fire you, but it means there's less of this pressure from behind, and that they feel like they can treat you, they have to treat you better to keep you. Just as a side thing is, when you get into the industry, bear that in mind as well. Are there any other gotchas you can think of? The worst, I've already communicated what I think the worst problem I've seen in the industry was someone who wouldn't ask for help and really struggled because of that, and it became a really bad situation. You know what I'm talking about, I think. And that was purely because everyone wanted to help, but they didn't want to ask for help, and then they ended up digging themselves in this anxiety hole. So
that's
that
why
was
it's important to have some level of knowledge about yourself. Like, you should understand what type of person you are, and try to communicate well with others. Because then in my experience, every company that I ever worked with, like, people were nice and they wanted to help each other. Very rare where engineers are hostile to each other. It does happen, but in a healthy company, it's way more likely that people try to help each other than they try to, backstab each other. So it's a relatively good industry to enter, because I think we're all like-minded. We like tech, we like cool things, gadgets and whatnot. So it's very easy to make good relationships in this industry, I feel, right? Because we're not competing with each other. We're cooperating with each other to create something new. It's not like sales. I'm not a salesperson, so I can't judge. But if it's a zero-sum or some game where you compete with each other to a certain degree, it creates a different dynamics. And in engineering, we don't have that.
No, I was going to say, also bear in mind your reputation matters.
Yeah, it's more than you
from
think.
day one, be really, if you're friendly and you admit you're wrong, but you can learn. If you admit you're wrong and you never learn, that's a different thing. But if you admit you're wrong and you can learn, and you're friendly, you get a good reputation if you do good work. And a bad reputation can sink you, especially when you live in a small place like Sweden. If there's a small area, so just as a side note, bear that in mind. Bring your best.
I agree, 100%. Like, your reputation is the only thing that carries over always. Even if you this is such a small world. It's if you destroy your reputation, people will know about you. People talk to each other. High-level engineers, like C-levels, always talk to each other in the industry. They ask for recommendations. It's
more important as you get higher up. Yeah.
Well, even if you want to improve your, or if you want to progress in your career, integrity is key.
People of the same level tend to stick together, I think, is what you're getting at? So like C levels talk to each other,
Mm.
staff levels will talk to each other, engineering managers will talk to each other, especially in the same industries or in the same areas. So yeah, just be wary of that, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Try to be helpful generally in every role you have, and think. What I like to do, but maybe it just comes with maturity, is I always try to make myself redundant, because
Yeah,
that
me too.
means the company is not reliant on me.
Yep.
So it means it's a better position. Like you can think at the lowest level as well. If you're doing repetitive jobs, try to automate it, right? It's because that shows that you're working for the benefit of the company, not your personal benefit. If you start building castle walls around your little projects and siloing and trying to avoid changes to what you do just because you feel like that gives you security, you're doing the opposite. Nobody because then you're destroying your integrity, your reputation, and then when you go to the next job, people will say like, no, like we've seen this guy doing in the previous company. I worked with him or her, and they were trying to just secure their own job, and they hindered other people's work. Nobody will hire you then, right? It will be really difficult. But if you show initiatives, you show that you're making it better for everyone around you, you're not taking away your own job, you're creating new opportunities for yourself, because then people will say like, hey, I want to see the same pattern repeated in other areas. Hey, could you help out with that problem as well? And then so only like narrow-minded people try to do these little politics games where they create little areas of that they defend to their last breath.
Yep. But like, as someone who's seen that and being a higher up in those situations, that is a red flag, and I want to get rid of that person.
100%. And I have seen this several times in my world, and I still remember the people's names, and I know I will never hire them.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just spiteful.
Yeah, spiteful.
but this is how humans work, right? Like if I see negative behavior, toxic behavior from someone, I will not give them a second chance.
I was thinking as well, maybe this will come up in a different topic where we talk about work-life balance or something in a future episode. But it maybe aligns with reputation and knowing yourself. If you find yourself becoming bored or unmotivated, it's probably best to move on. Like I learned that lesson pretty recently, where I was at a position too long, and it affected my work. And I don't think it affected my reputation. I don't think it did. I think I still left with a good reputation, but I should have left a year or two earlier, and then I would have had a great reputation. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but it's also more for your own mental health, right?
That was the key thing, but I'm thinking from a reputation perspective. But from a mental health perspective, it was horrible, like, because I felt useless. But let's talk about that in a different topic.
Okay.
So should we call it there? Should we do a summary?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the key takeaway is that this is still a good industry to enter. I think there's a lot of opportunities still. There is future in this AI here.
It's massive. They're going to need so many people. It's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's still good. It's you can enjoy this field from a creative perspective as well. You can improve your people skills. If you only want to have people skills, that's also perfectly fine. You can just do management. Tech will not go away. It just keeps increasing. You can specialize if you want. You can be generalist. And after you gain some knowledge, you can even be completely self-sufficient, meaning you can consult. You don't have to work for a big organization. You can create your own
I think
startup.
Something we
It's
didn't
amazing,
talk about
right?
that is so cool about tech is you could just start up something super quickly.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a mechanic, it's much harder to, let's say, like if you're building planes in a big factory, you can't start your own little plane factory, right? It's much harder probably. In software engineering, you can fork, you can switch completely and then just do your own. I think it's still an amazing industry to be in, and I don't see
AI
it going
is a bit
away.
scary, but embrace it because the adaptability is key.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you enter the industry and 10 years down the line, it would be completely different industries.
That's something that we haven't touched on, but this is true for the almost 30 years that I'm in this industry. You have to keep learning. Every year you have to update your knowledge. You have to check the new technologies. You have to understand what's happening on the market. So that will never go away. So this keeps you on your toes a little bit. It's not like most other professions where if you know the basics, you can do the same for 20 years. Your knowledge probably expires in 5 years, every 5 years or so. So you have to keep constantly learning, which is great if you're a curious person. But if your nature is not like that, like you don't like to keep up with what's happening, you're gonna suffer. So
you could find a company that would take you to do that.
Yeah,
because there's still COBOL programmers and stuff, right?
That's true. But it's
the more you do it, it's a niche, and then you can charge more for the niche over time. But and if that's what you want to do, it's fine. But most people in the industry have to keep moving, and I think maybe that's another reason why moving quite frequently, every 2-3 years, is a good idea. Because where I was talking about where I lost motivation, I started losing grasp of where the industry was going. So maybe I think a good strategy personally is you spend 2-3 years at a big company, then you do startup for a bit, then you do 2-3 years at a big company, then you do startup, because then you're constantly being pushed forward.
Yeah, but that's a fact. Technology changes, the ways of working changes, the philosophy behind how we're doing things changes. So it's not a boring industry, that's for sure.
No. And you'll meet some great people, and hopefully still make good money.
Yeah.
And then if they finally sort it out, you can work from anywhere. You can work from anywhere.
Yeah, that's maybe one of the challenges, or it has been the last few years for juniors. It used to be very easy to learn from each other at work because you were just sitting next to each other, and it's very high bandwidth. You can ask questions, you can see how other people work, literally how they code, and you can learn a lot from that. And now with the remote work, it's much more difficult to build the social relationships that you need to do. So, but it's not impossible, but you have to dedicate some time to it, and you have
to force mob programming or something.
Yeah, exactly. So there are ways to overcome that, but the company has to put effort into it. Also, having just non-work chats or a little bit of
socializing,
coffee, socializing. So get to know each other a bit better, which makes work together easier.
If you are doing a remote-only job, it's almost always the best idea to go spend a week at the place.
Yeah,
that's what I think. You spend a week, you ingrain yourself, and then you can work from home. And it completely changes it. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully this was interesting as always, and thank you, Krisztian, for your insights.
Thanks for inviting me, Toby.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. We'll see you in the next one. Peace. Puss. Thank you for listening to the Tech League podcast.